Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Mark Bovag. I'm here with Adrian McKee.
Adrian McKee, yes.
And we both are representing the Baha'i community. And very, very grateful to be here with you all today to share some of our thoughts about making the world a better place. So just a little bit of background. Baha'i faith is a relatively young religion in the pantheon of all religions, right? So it started in the 19th century. Founder is Baha'u'llah, and he, like all founders of religions, has sacred text and all that. And I'm going to share with you some of the principles from the writings of the faith that we think has a lot of relevancy for creating unity amongst all our diverse populations, right? And that's actually the watchword, the byline of the Baha'i faith. And the central purpose of this revelation is to create unity, a united world. And so all of the principles of the faith are centered towards that. We like to, there's a great analogy about how these great prophets and teachers are like a physician, right? And the physician looks at the body and goes, well, what's wrong here? What's wrong here? And prescribes a medicine. And for the Baha'is, the root problem there are many problems, of course, but the root of this is disunity, right?
Especially today.
Especially today, right? So then, we have a set of principles that help us to address that. Of course, the hard part of doing that is the doing of it, right? Right? We all come from somewhere, and we all have guidance and spiritual teachings and things that we believe in, and there's much that we all share in those things. And for me, it's like I've got a beautiful architectural plan, and I'm going to build a house, right? But I'm just still figuring out how to use the hammer, right? And so the plan may be beautiful, right? So I'm speaking very personal here. The plan is beautiful, and I believe in the plan, right? Right? But really, what matters is how can I apply that in my life? And I really think we all deal with this, right? We all in some way have to say, how do we do this? Now, so let me ask Adrian to read these things off, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
These are the major principles of our faith. And the first one is unity of God, unity of humanity, unity of religion, elimination of all forms of prejudices, and elimination of extreme wealth and poverty, equality between men and women, non-involvement in partisan politics, establishment of a world parliament. Work in the spirit of service is considered worship. Harmony of religion and science. Independent investigation of truth, one of my favorites. Universal auxiliary language. Universal compulsory education. And world peace and a new world order. Now, we believe that there's only one God. It makes no sense that there's more than one God. Why would God be in competition with himself? And we believe in the unity of religion because with one God, all the religions are related, we believe. And just the messengers came at a particular time to particular places to educate mankind and to teach us of God and what God's plan is for us. Elimination of prejudice, well, that one is just really ballooned lately. And we thought for a while that we were on our way, and we've learned that no, we really were not, because you can change the laws, but nothing changes until we change our hearts. Non-involvement in partisan politics. Well, anything partisan is divisive. What our purpose is to come together. So we need to concentrate on, what I like to say, is concentrate on the issues, not the individuals. And that way, that's the only way we can come together, is to focus on the problem. work in spirit of is a spirit of worship. Well, working is how when we work, we help to better mankind. And there's nothing better than that. We're here to help ourselves. And in the independent investigation of truth, well, especially with Baha'is, you are not born a Baha'i. You can be raised a Baha'i, but when you reach the age of maturity, you have to decide for yourself whether you want to be Baha'i or something else or whatever. So you are not forced into, believing. You have to do that yourself, and you have to investigate for yourself. And we're also responsible for our own knowledge. We cannot depend on other people. We have to learn for ourselves, because otherwise we can be led astray. So universal auxiliary language, well, if we can't talk to each other, how can we be unified? And with an auxiliary language, that means you can go anywhere and be able to communicate with people. Compulsory education, well, that goes without saying. We have to learn how to think. We have to, education is the stairway to knowledge, to spirituality, to everything. If we're ignorant, we can't worship God to our fullest extent. And of course, world peace and a new world order. What we have right now, what's going on right now, we have systems that are antiquated, that no longer serve the purpose. In fact, are detrimental to what's going on. So what we have to do is we have to develop a new system of living, of dealing with people, of accepting everybody, because before, when it took years to go around the world, now you can do it within a day. We're much closer, and we can't be as divided anymore. We can't. The world has gotten too small to be divided. So we have to just come together and start to work towards the whole instead of the part.
So these are some of the principles, right? And as I said before, I love these principles. I was raised with these principles. I said, oh, this is great stuff.
And I discovered them because I was not born into a good family or anything. I just stumbled across it one day at the pool.
Yeah.
You never know.
In the hippie era, right?
Back in the '60s when.
But for me, this is one of the things I'm very happy to be sitting next to Adrian here, because he has really done something. He and his wife Nancy done something really special by taking one of these principles, and we're here today to talk about, well, what can we do? Not in the we're here to talk about, like, what can we actually do, right? We all have beautiful ideas, right? They come from a very sacred, important place for us. But what are we doing? And this young man here has
young.
He and his wife back in 2016 were looking around and was very concerned about divisiveness. I think we all can look around and see that. Boy, the temperature is hot, right? And Adrian was very concerned about how is it that people can have discussions around racism and prejudice and make it better, right?
Well, it all started around the dining room table, because my wife and I used to host a Saturday night dinner. Anybody could come, no invitation, just show up. And when we get together and share a meal, of course there's conversation. And in 2016, after a certain event, a lot of this discussion started revolving around racism and what was going on. And it was through that my wife and I decided, well, we should, maybe just get together just for that one issue, because that keeps coming up more than anything else in our dinner. So that's when we started doing pizza and social justice meetings.
Yeah, they formed a group informally called Pizza and Social Justice, because you got to get people in the door. So pizza.
If you feed them, they will come.
And they did. And they did. And through a number of events where we showed some films and things like that, we were able to get a group of people together who were interested to talk. And
And part of that is part of learning about having the conversation is learning how to listen. Because nowadays it seems that everybody is great at talking, but we're horrible at listening. And so we teach listening as well with the discussion. And also that it's okay to have differing opinions. You know, we're all not the same, so we're all going to be different. We're all going to have different opinions. But because we have different opinions, that's not a reason to chastise or hate or yell at, or, you know, we have to respect each other and our opinions.
And I think what I learned from participating in Pizza Social Justice is that these things take practice. You know, I've grown up believing that we're all one family. That's what my parents taught me from my faith. We're all one human family. And yet I grew up in the collar suburbs of Chicago, and you know, maybe I didn't have as much exposure to all the different kinds of folks, you know, and then I'm sitting in these meetings with people and we're having conversations, and I'm learning how to have difficult conversations. And that was a learning experience. Even though you know, it's one thing to say we're all brothers and sisters, right? And we are, right? But it's not always easy. So the thing that I think we can offer, you know, just one idea that we can offer is that take one thing that you believe in, one thing that's dear to you, and find ways to put it into practice. You know, we all have, and it requires all of us to do it, right? When we do this together, not just like, you know, me and Adrian, we believe the same thing, so that's easy, right? That's easy, right? You know, we're preaching to the choir here, right? It's when you get in the room, like we're doing today, maybe you know, we have a lot in common, maybe we don't, and that's where the work starts. Thank you.
And one other thing is, just one down. So we're done.
Go, well,
I had just one other point. The other thing is that when we have these conversations, they're not to change people's mind, because you're not going to change someone else's mind. We have to change our own mind. So what I like to think of that what we're trying to do is to make people aware, because a lot about especially implicit biases, people are not aware that they're participating in it. And so, you know, unless you become aware of something, there's no way you can take action to make correction or anything. So we as I said, we try to do it in a non-threatening way, but it's a learning for everybody involved. You know, being black, I have to get used to being able to talk to white people, and vice versa. But it's, you know, it's something that everybody gains from, and that's why we that's why we do this.
awesome.
Now I'm done.
Thanks. Excellent. We can keep moving down the table if you're ready, Rabbi. Yeah.
I'm Rabbi Stephen Bob. I'm the Rabbi Emeritus at Congregation Etz Chaim. Our synagogue is located in Lombard. It's one of two synagogues in DuPage County. So we serve a good portion of DuPage County and adjoining areas of other counties. Jews are a small minority in America. We're about 2%. And in this part of Illinois, we're a smaller minority. We're a tiny percentage of the people of DuPage County. I have been here, I live in Glen Ellen, I've been here almost 40 years. Probably more than 40 years, I've actually stopped and do the math now. I've been very involved in interfaith activities. As I'm sure some of you know, we have a very strong Glen Ellen interfaith prayer breakfast each October. It is the most interfaith of events, prayer breakfast events that I'm aware of in the world. Usually prayer breakfasts are any kind of evangelical Protestants are invited, and that's about it. And maybe for the liberal prayer breakfast groups, they have Catholics. Our prayer breakfast under Mike Fermento's leadership is very, very interfaith, and we have a really very broad range. And many of the people who are here today have been involved in it in one way or another. The houses of worship of Glen Ellen, the leaders of the houses of worship of Glen Ellen know each other, work together, and trust each other. I have spoken in bunches of the churches, that's the official technical term, bunches of the churches of Glen Ellen over the years. As I mentioned, I'm retired from my position as senior rabbi of the synagogue, and in retirement I have nested at Wheaton College. I'm the unofficial campus rabbi of Wheaton College. I have an office in the Billy Graham Center. I do love saying it. Probably one bit more than I should. But we're all aware of the discord in our country today. But I think that there's more than one current in the river at the same time. There is a rise of hate speech, and many of us have experienced that personally. Sadly, at our synagogue, when we gather for worship or for religious education, we have an off-duty police officer at the door because we have to feel safe. But at the same time, we can have programs like this, and I didn't come here worrying was somebody going to hurt me, or worrying was somebody going to say something insulting to me. I understood we were going to speak to each other with kindness and with respect. And I think that's very much the tone of the religious community here in Glen Ellen and in the larger community as well. To start to tell you about Judaism, I don't have enough time. So we're a really old religion, and we believe in all sorts of things. God took us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. God brought us to Mount Sinai, gave us the Torah, and we have to keep doing all these important things. That's the really, really short version. Yes, now you have a bar mitzvah. So what I brought with me today is a shofar. So the shofar is a ram's horn, as I demonstrated for my new friends here. It once was on the head of an actual ram. I did not remove it from the ram's head myself. I bought it in a store. We sound the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is part of our high holidays in the fall, and the high holidays are time for us to return to God. That God calls us back. It is human nature to stray, and that we need to be reminded of the path in which we should be walking. And we need to, I think, annually figure things out for ourselves, take stock of where we've been, take stock of where we want to be. Is who I am now who I really want to be, or is who I am now who I really can be? And the high holidays in the fall call us to think about these most weighty of questions. These holidays are the show-up times for us in the synagogue. We have to set up every chair we own in a very happy way. And part of the Rosh Hashanah service is sounding the shofar. Part of what I like about the shofar is there's not a single thing that's 21st century about this. You don't have to plug it in or put it on a charger. It comes charged. You have to recharge yourself, but the shofar is ready to go. And the shofar hasn't changed over the centuries. That on Rosh Hashanah 700 years ago in Spain or in Turkey or in Lithuania, somebody picked up a shofar and looked just like this. No. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Of course.
Now, I have to apologize. I don't like to apologize before I do something. I should only do things in public that I'm confident of doing. I am not the congregation's shofar sounder. We have a fine fellow who's really good at this, who's an orchestra conductor by profession, and yes, he can play melodies on this. But since he's not here,
Give it a go.
I will give it a go.
Give it a go.
Okay.
All right.
Encore.
The shofar has three sounds. There's a single sound, and then there's one that's three blasts, and there's one that's a bunch of broken blasts, and then there's a long one. What I just played is called a tikiyah. Then there's shivarim, and then there's truah, and then there's one called the tikiyah gadola. that you're supposed to hold out as long as you can. So I will try that. Again, I'm not I'm just an old guy. But you can, even with no experience with the shofar, you can understand how it can speak to people in the congregation. And I think that on Rosh Hashanah, people feel if I've heard the shofar, I fulfilled my religious obligations. For some people who have drifted distance from the community, is I've heard the shofar, I've fulfilled my religious obligation for the year, I'll see you in 12 months. But for many people, there is something sincere about the sound of the shofar, and it is in a way a spiritual alarm clock. It wakes us up and says, God is looking for us. All we have to do is stop hiding. We don't have to go looking for God. God is looking for us. We don't have to go seek out holy people who know secrets of the world. It's all there in the Torah, in the Bible. And we just have to slow down and open our eyes to what's really important. This is my friend Ifti. Really, it's important for me to say that.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
So I want to informally, I don't want to say protest, but just informally make a lodge a complaint that I have to follow. I got nothing.
Ifti.
Yeah, below the horn.
So as Rabbi Bob said, my full name is Iftikhar Ahmad. That's a mouthful. I go by Ifti. Feel free to call me Ifti. I am a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in Chicago. We have a mosque in Glen Ellen. You may have driven by it. It's right on Route 53, right before Butterfield. If you're heading, that'd be north. No, south.
South.
Directions.
Yeah, come
So
on.
south. Sorry. I can find it on Google Maps, so that's an important thing. And just a little background about our community. So we're Ahmadi Muslims. We're Muslims who believe in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. So it's been prophesized that in a lot of major world religions, especially Islam, that there will be almost a second coming or somebody, a Messiah, who will come to basically bring the people together to, come at a time of disarray, especially the Muslim world. And our belief is that individual came in the person of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad at that time in India, which is present-day Qadian, India. And so our community is, a little more than 100 years old, 130 years old. We've been in America for about 100 years. Actually, we celebrated our centennial during 2020, which was 2020, which was also COVID. So February, we had our centennial official celebration, and then we had big plans for 2020, and Gad had other ideas, and we went with it, and we made it work. But the reason on, what our teachings, it's nothing new. So what I always tell people is that there's nothing wrong with Islam. The teachings of Islam are not the issue. The problem is us. People are imperfect. So the Messiah came to reform the Muslims, to teach them what is true Islam. What does Islam really stand for, right? What are the true teachings? It is loving all mankind. It is not. It is being tolerant of other religions. Our motto of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is love for all, hatred for none. That's a register. That is what we go by, and all of our members believe that because that is what true Islam teaches us. So I think it's important that you realize that there's no monopoly on salvation. I can't look at you and say, oh, you don't believe in what I believe, you're going to hell. God forbid, something like that. I don't even know where I'm going. That's God's decision and His decision alone. And I think that those are the kind of things that we focus on. I was talking to Justin earlier. We were talking about how there's commonalities in all religions in the world. And if you really look at the core beliefs of religions, about 90%, maybe even higher, it's the same, right? There's no religion where murder's okay. There's no religion where adultery's okay. At least as far as I know. But my point being is that we tend to spend all our time on that 5 or 10% that's different. And that's where I think we need to make a shift. We need to look at those commonalities and bring people together. With things like this. The item I bought is certainly not as entertaining as that, but it is it's a prayer mat. It's called a janamaz. Namaz is a word for prayer in Arabic, but this is what it looks like. And
Here, I'll be your Vanna
no,
White.
it's fine.
You want me to be the Vanna White?
Oh, you don't. I mean, if you would.
Oh, come on, it's beautiful.
It's always been a childhood dream.
There you go, right? Yeah.
And the reason I brought it was because we pray every day. So as part of the Islamic faith, we pray 5 times a day as the prescribed prayers on a daily basis. But then, we pray for everything. The blessings of God are countless. So, I pray before I eat a meal. I pray on the way here. Anytime I get in the car and I'm about to drive, I pray that God gets me from point A to point B. I prayed silently before we started that I don't say something stupid because I'm representing a congregation, and if my mom finds out that I didn't say anything right, I might not be able to do this anymore. So that's one of the reasons that I brought this. I think that prayer brings us closer to our God, and it allows us to get rid of sins. It allows us to be good. I think that we try to imitate God in the best attributes. We want to go from being lowly and worldly into going to becoming highly noble and sublime servants of God and speaking the correct teachings. I think that, as I mentioned before, there's no monopoly in salvation. Islam recognizes all the major religions in the world. All the prophets are our prophets. They're in the Quran. We have very high esteem for them. Very high esteem. Highest respect for all the prophets that are in all the holy books. So I think that's important. And I don't want to say it's a misconception to think that, especially with things that are happening even in the last couple of years, that Islam gets defined by people saying that that's what they're doing. Okay? So a lot of the things that happen in this world, somebody might say that, oh, well, this is part of my faith. It's not. True Islam does not teach murder. True Islam does not teach intolerance. It just doesn't. And I'll be happy to, if somebody wants to, I don't think anybody in this room, but if anybody wanted to have an argument with me, name the time and place. I'll find you multiple places in the Quran or in the Hadith, which are the sayings of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Talking about diversity, I think, somebody had mentioned just their experiences growing up and things like that and intolerance. I grew up, so I was born in Oak Lawn, Illinois, and I lived in Glen Ellen for a while, and that's kind of where my congregation started. It was not as big then. Then I went to Michigan, and this, long story short, I'm back, right? So why am I back? I mean, I love Glen Ellen. But I'm back because this is where my faith is. So this is where, where the people that I pray with, this is where they are. But it takes me back to a story when I was in 7th or 8th grade. I was playing basketball at like a YMCA. This is in a small town in Southwest Michigan where, I was considered a minority. And there was 4 not-white people in this school. And I was playing basketball. And this was right around the time of the first Gulf War, late 80s. And I remember playing basketball, and I don't remember what happened. I fouled a kid or something. And he said to me, why don't you go back to Iraq? And my first thought was, joke's on you, I'm from Oak Lawn. Yep. But then I thought about it later when I got home. I'm like, okay, now I know what he meant by that. I wasn't too sharp growing up. Smart guy now. And it got me thinking that the reason he said that was because he was having a bad game, and it was just an easy knock. But it was ignorance, right? It was not knowing. And that's when I thought, okay, I think I can't blame other people, right? I can't blame somebody for not knowing who I am or what I'm about or anything like that. I have to take some of the responsibility, right? And ignorance it doesn't mean dumb. Again, we just talked about this. It doesn't mean dumb, it just means I don't know, right? I'm ignorant of a lot of things. We all are, right? But that doesn't mean we're dumb, it's just that we don't know. We don't know any better. So I take it upon my responsibility to make sure that, hey, this is who we are, this is who we represent, and then you make your own conclusions, right? I'm not going to tell you you're right, you're wrong, but this is who we are, and go from there. And I think that's one of the greatest things about this country, and I love this country, as imperfect as it is. And why? Because I have freedom of conscience. I can think what I want to think, and in theory, nobody can, put me in jail, God forbid, or anything, just for my thoughts, right? And let's face it, there's countries where you can think something and you can go to jail. I mean, it seems such a foreign thing, but here, I had a chance, my kids have a chance, always. Whatever they want to do, whatever they decide to do, they become, they have that freedom. And I think that that's one of the things that makes us great. And I think that, again, having an opportunity to do this is something we all have to take advantage of. I mean, like I said, we love being part of this community. We do interfaiths, we do open houses, we march in the 4th of July parade in Glen Ellen almost every year. Why? Because this is our community. And there's actually in the Quran, it actually says, in chapter 4, verse 60, O ye who believe, obey Allah, obey the Prophet, and obey those in authority from among you. So we are bound in Islam to follow the country that we're in, right? Or to at least support, to a certain extent, not the bad stuff, but again, we have that freedom of conscience, right? And in some countries that doesn't exist. So, again, very thankful to be here, very appreciative of the opportunity to share, and happy to answer questions later on.
This is yours now. Yep.
Is the mic close enough? That's good. All right. Hello, my name is Justin Tanksley. I'm from the town over, Wheaton, Illinois, and I work for the Theosophical Society in America. And before I get into more about the society, I wanted to share a story that comes from the Advaita Vedanta tradition. And I think it pertains to a lot of what we're discussing, but the state of the world that we're in, or the state of human consciousness in this current day. So there's this story that there's a guide, and it can be told in many ways, and I'm telling it my way. There's a guide, and he's taking a group of people up a mountain, and the sun sets, and they decide to continue, and so they're going up this narrow path on a mountain. And the guide in the front sees what appears to him to be a snake. And so he freaks out, he turns around, and he pushes people. Some people fall, some people get injured, and everyone is in a state of chaos, and they all retreat down the mountain. They find a place to sleep for the night, and they wake up in the morning, and they continue up the mountain. In the sunlight, they get to the point where they had saw the snake the night before, and they realize, oh, it wasn't a snake, and it's a rope. And they realize, as instead of pushing each other, they could have used the rope to continue their journey up the mountain. And I think this story is a great reflection of to use the term ignorance in the way that it means not knowing. In their ignorance, there was fear and there was chaos. And I think that the state that our world is in today, or each of us as individuals, is we're in a state of not knowing to some degree. Perhaps we know some things, or that we can agree that we know some things, but in my understanding and my belief, the reality is that we don't know. We don't know necessarily who we are, or a better way to put it is perhaps we have forgotten who we are and forgotten what we are and where we come from. So the Theosophical Society was founded in the 1800s, 1875, by more than one person, but one of the core founders was a woman named Madame Blavatsky, and she was from Russia. And she had traveled the world. She had been to Egypt. She had been to Tibet. She had visited China. She was in the Americas. And she spent a great deal of time in India. And everywhere she went, the goal was to find different religions, different philosophies, and the leaders of these religions and philosophies, and to gather the knowledge from all these different places. So in 1875, there was the goal to bring these ideas from around the world, particularly the ideas in the East, like ideas like reincarnation, meditation, karma. These were unknown to Europe and America at that time, or very little known. And so they formed the Theosophical Society in New York City to bring these ideas to the West. The Theosophical Society has three objects. The first object is to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity without a distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. The second one is to investigate or to study the comparative religion, science, spirituality, and the arts. And the third one is to investigate the nature, the hidden laws of nature and the hidden laws within all of humanity. So for me, and perhaps most people at the Theosophical Society, there's this idea that everything is one, which I really appreciated the talk from the Baha'i Faith, because I see a lot of commonality, similarities in what we are talking about. And so there's this idea that everything is one, and from this oneness, as it transcends through the different spheres of reality into the physical world, when it gets here, it expresses itself in a myriad of ways, an infinite amount of ways. So throughout different times, places, geographic locations, and different traditions, cultures, the idea of this oneness, it expresses itself in different ways. So we have different forms of religion, different forms of philosophy, different approaches to what people call science, and different ways of expressing music. Not all music is played on the same instrument. Not all music is saying the same way. Not all music comes together the same way, but nonetheless it's music. So these are all expressions of this one life, whether that's a religion, whether that's some form of art. Even each of us are seemingly individual, and yet we come from the same source. And so we're all just varying expressions of that source as it gets down into the third dimensional reality. So the word theosophy, it seems perhaps familiar in some way. You think theology and you're like, wait, no, that's not the same thing. And then you hear the word Sophie, like philosophy. So the word just determined, I won't go to the extent of trying to define theosophy, but to term it, you got theos, which is divine or God, and then you have Sophie, which comes from the Greek Sophia, which is wisdom. So it could be put together as something like divine wisdom, or wisdom of God, or wisdom of gods. And so that's what the word theosophy is, and this divine wisdom has existed prior to humanity. It is the divine wisdom of the one source, or God, if you like to use that term, or the universe. And so the universe has this wisdom, and whenever there's a form to express this wisdom, that form will do its best to express it in whatever way possible. So you have the mineral kingdom, you have the plant kingdom, you have the animal or mineral, plant, animal, human, and beyond. And each of these kingdoms that very life, that oneness, that divine wisdom is within it and can express itself. So in the mineral, you have, let's say, a crystal or a diamond. In the plant, you have trees, you have, and each form allows this divine wisdom to express itself a little more complex. So you have trees, you have plants, they can move and realize where the sun is, they can create offspring and have more plants. At the animal kingdom, you have the ability to move around this third dimensional reality. You start to gain, you see the expression of emotion and thinking. And then at the human level, it's pretty complex, and we have the ability to have emotions and thoughts and this seeking, this awakening towards back to the oneness. So all of that is just a brief understanding of what theosophy is. And the Theosophical Society exists today to serve as a platform for all of these different ways of expression to have a place. So we have programs at the Theosophical Society that are related to Christianity. We have Buddhist programs, we have meditation programs, we have essentially things that are related to all different faiths and traditions, and we try to maintain that open-mindedness towards all of these different ways of perceiving the world, perceiving God, perceiving each other. As for the state of the world today, one way that I'm looking at it through my own lens is seeing that I feel separate at times from other people. I feel separate from the ground and the air, from the trees and the animals. And through the study of theosophy, I'm starting to realize that I'm connected. And at a physical level, perhaps we can notice some separation, but that's an illusion, and even science will tell us that we're all breathing the same air, we're all connected through the same atoms. And then at the emotional level, there's a sense of separation, but the emotions are temporary. They come and they go. So I know I'm not my emotions. And then at the level of mind, thoughts come and go. And that's another separating aspect to what we are. But beyond the mind, the emotions, and the physical body, we start to become closer to God. We get closer to that source of oneness that I was talking about. And so the teachings of theosophy help us through meditation, through study, and through service, serving each other and all life, that we are actually connected. And there becomes a shift in consciousness through these different practices. And it's not limited to these practices. Prayer is another way to daily renew that connection to source. So there's different ways to do it, but through these teachings, we're able to take ourselves from this separated feeling to an interconnectedness. And as a result of this interconnectedness, we treat each other different. We treat each other with love. And the ultimate expression of oneness, in my understanding, in my limited understanding, is love. Love is the expression of being connected. If you go to the Bible and Jesus says, love thy neighbor, love yourself, love God, that is the expression of being one. And so one metaphor that I thought was helpful to the state of the world is that if we're in this room and we notice, if we're in this room and we notice that some water starts coming in, of course we're going to pick our bags off the ground. If there's any technology on the ground, we're going to pick it up. And to me, this is a metaphor of serving the world, right? So there's someone hungry, we make an attempt to feed them. Whatever issue there is that we can serve, we make attempts to help that. But the source of these issues is not the issue itself. It's, to me, the state of consciousness that we're in. We're stuck in the separated state of consciousness. And so if water's coming in, eventually we need to find the source of the water. We find it, it's the bathroom, the sink is leaking, we turn it off, the water stops flooding the room. And so in this metaphor, in the world, why do we have homelessness? Why do we have racism? Why do we have wars? Why do we have all of these issues? And I believe that it stems from our ignorance in that we think we're separate. We think we're separate from each other. We think we're separate from nature. And being in this state allows us to do what we do to the world. And so through theosophy, to shut the water off, so to speak, is to elevate our consciousness, go back to center, find your heart, find love, find higher consciousness, however you want to term that, I believe is very important for the world to be reconciled in all of the separateness that we find ourselves. Lastly, I think I have about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I brought this object, which doesn't necessarily have to do with the Theosophical Society in the way that it looks. A friend painted this for me, but it's a heart with a brain and a heart put together. And so we have spirit and we have matter. And we have consciousness and we have the vehicles consciousness uses. We have life and we have form or body. We have active principles and then we have receptive principles. The sun gives light, the moon receives it. As we move down, we have masculine and feminine qualities. We have male and female. We have left brain and right brain. We have what's outside of us and then we have what's inside of us. And so this, to me, is a perfect representation of bringing those, they're not even opposites, but to bring these opposites back together and make life whole. And that's what this symbol represents to me. And I believe that that's what the Theosophical Society is all about, is to reconcile all the differences in God's expression and bring it back into a wholeness, a oneness. So, and I'm used to always being on that side of the microphone, so I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak and be here with you all. Thank you.
And then we're gonna have Teal come on over, so either one of you
Apparently,
gentlemen.
apparently I have to move to the microphone.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, that's very generous. All right, I did cheat, I brought more than one thing. But I did bring, so I'm Teal Mercant, and I'm representing Wicca and paganism. I'm a high priestess of a coven, and my tradition is living tapestry tradition. And I wanted to bring some representations. We believe in a lot of things, but we believe in a goddess and a god, or sometimes goddesses and gods, or even multi-gendered and non-gendered aspects of deity. And so I brought just a representation of the goddess and the god, just to kind of like give you that visual of that difference. I decided to wing it a little bit, as opposed to writing down all my answers, because as I kept thinking about it, I was like, well, this still changes for me. How do I want to approach it? So I wanted to hear what everyone else had to say to see how I wanted to address this. I drove an hour to get here, which is part of why I was a little bit late. I live up in Gray's Lake. So that's a little bit of a drive, and I was like, I don't even know where I'm going. I turned in the wrong direction at one point, but the other object that I brought, and then I'm going to talk about this because I'll talk a little bit more about why it's important to me when I talk about sort of what Wicca and paganism are. So I actually brought a tarot deck. And one of the reasons why I brought a tarot deck is because one of the things that's really important to us in Wicca and paganism is self-reflection, self-discovery. And so you use the tarot deck sometimes to I've got a problem going on, what can I do? You ask questions and you kind of reflect on what the answers are. Wicca is an earth-centered religion that, again, may recognize goddess and a god or more than that. It actually highly focuses on self-responsibility and our responsibility to the world, to the planet, right? And that interconnectedness that I heard so many people talk about, right? We're all part of this world. We're not separate from it. And when you think about the world as sacred, you're going to treat it very differently than you would if you think of it as an object. If you think of other people as also part of that sacredness, you're going to treat them differently than if you think of them as the other, right? And we tend to other people a lot of times. So when we're thinking about one of the things that's so important for us to do is to understand our own selves, but also understand we're part of this larger collective, right? So how we treat ourselves is also just as important as how we treat each other. And I think somebody else said that. I think you were saying love yourself, not just love your neighbor, but love yourself. So we celebrate, so somebody was talking about some of the different holidays that they celebrate. Our holidays tend to be centered around the calendar year. We call it the wheel of the year. And that relates a lot to what's happening at that time, right? So right now we're heading up to the summer solstice. That's the height of the sun. That's when the sun is the brightest, and that is where we're at our height, right? The zenith, right? And that's a time of joy, a time of full self-expression, right? You think of dancing and ecstasy in that way, right? Whereas and we have the winter solstice, right? Which many of you know is around that time of Christmas and other kinds of holidays around that time. And that's to celebrate the fact that we're now in the darkness and the light is reborn, right? And so through the year it goes through, we have Imbolc in February, which kind of the light is finally coming back up again. And then we have the spring equinox, which is, that balance of light and dark. The equinoxes are just as important as the solstices, right? Because that balance is so key, right? And it goes along like that. I'm not going to list all of our holidays, but understand that a lot of them were largely created out of sort of agricultural understandings, people who are closer to the earth, closer to paying attention to the cycles of the sun and the moon. But let's also be real. There's a lot of modern aspects, right? So this religion is actually influenced by and definitely informed by a lot of past religions, but Wicca and neo-paganism have really only existed in their current form since probably about the 50s, right? And I think that all religions sort of go through that. There's always a renewal or a renaissance of the different religions, and so this is our modern interpretation of these older paths and understanding the importance of those connections. So in many Wiccan and pagan traditions, there's also an understanding that it's what we do, not just what we think, right? So you can believe whatever you want to believe, but if you don't put your beliefs into action, you're really missing a very important piece, right? So intent is one thing, but you also have to, what we call acting in accord, right? So we might use the term spell, you might use the term prayer, but let's say that you pray for a job. If that's all you do, you're probably not gonna get a job. If you do a spell for a job, so what do you have to do? You don't just do the spell or say the prayer, then you go out and you put your resume together, put in job applications, right? You have to do the work. So it's not just, we're acting with the gods, not asking them to do our work for us, right? And so what we do is just as important as what we think. In fact, more important than what we think, right? Although it's nice to have the freedom to be able to think, right? So in this sense, we also are very much about activism. So there are many, many folks in Wicca and neo-paganism who believe that we need to actually work for justice and peace, and so taking action in those forms as well. So you'll see a fair amount of activism in that way. And there is a lot of diversity within Wicca and paganism. I do find personally that there's a greater acceptance of LGBTQ plus folks, for example. And definitely today I've been, I don't want to tell you my age, but I've been, we said 40 years, I have probably been practicing for about 40 years, and I'm definitely more than 40. So that is actually an important piece. And I've watched some things evolve and change and grow, because this is one of the reasons why our tradition is called living tapestry tradition, because Wicca and paganism are living religions, and they fit with the people who are doing them, right? The people who are living them. And so there's this point of you have to sort of grow and evolve. So your practice grows and evolves as you grow and evolve. And hopefully we're all growing and evolving, right? That's kind of the goal. So for me, I'm going to try to keep mine shorter because I want to make not to have it run too long. For me, this key is that we all are connected, and sometimes I certainly feel like, and I think you probably feel this way too. I certainly feel like the odd one out when we have interfaith discussions, because people know a lot less about my religion, and I have actually been invited to a couple of interfaith practices, and we did run into the same thing. They wanted to do an interfaith. This was back in the early 2000s. I was in grad school, going in Ball State University, and they wanted to do for the day of prayer. And they had the interfaith chapter there. There was a whole place that did interfaith stuff. And they wanted to do a large interfaith thing. But the more evangelical groups were like, we're going to do our thing because we don't want to sit with the Jews and the pagans. And it was really interesting which sad, really, is what I thought. This was a really big missed opportunity for us to all come together in prayer. And since that particular year, it fell on May 2nd, it was actually our Beltane. So I gave a very specific prayer to Beltane and to spring and to all that burgeoning, fertility of ideas and hope and flowers. And that was a really great experience for me. But I feel like we don't do enough of that. People get really siloed in their different areas. And so things like this, I think, are so important for us to be able to come together. Even if you don't believe anything that anyone up here says, it's still good to hear about where everyone is coming from, right? I think that's pretty much. I'm a teacher by my day job, so I'm all like, is there anything else that I need to say? But I think we're good. Thank you.
One more round of applause and then we'll stop the video.